This is usually my chore during the offseason, rating the conferences right here on Mark Rogers TV. But if you look at the schedule, you'll see that by and large, about 75 to 80% of the non-conference games between the Power Fives have been played. So we got a pretty good grasp on who has played the best, not necessarily judging who is the best, but who's played the best on the field. So we can talk about the eye test. We can talk about potential NFL draft picks. We can talk about recruiting rankings. But the results on the field, that's what matters. So let's put it in perspective. We could just roll through the records, but we got to put the games in perspective because like-seeded teams don't typically play. Let's start with what is clearly, it doesn't take great analysis to figure this out. The worst conference in college football right now in the Power Five is the Big 12. The Big 12 is right now 3-7 against the other Power Five leagues, and they've lost all the significant games, excluding possibly Texas Notre Dame. Obviously, the shine is very much off of that game after the Texas loss to Cal and Notre Dame's losses in ensuing weeks, most notably Michigan State, of course. The Big 12 is so bad this year that the conference is only 15-11, period, including the group of 5 games and the FCS schedule. In the big games this year, Ohio State, Oklahoma. It's easy to say right now that Ohio State should beat Oklahoma. The Buckeyes are number 2 in the country. Oklahoma is number 25. Let's take it back just 3 weeks. These were supposedly evenly matched teams. And if anything, Oklahoma, the prohibitive favorite in the Big 12, Ohio State kind of shared favorite status in the Big 10 with Michigan. Oklahoma gets trashed at home by 21 points against Ohio State. Arkansas defeats TCU. Again, TCU at home in that game. Houston over Oklahoma. That's a group of 5 loss, still a credible loss, not an embarrassing loss. But all of us think Oklahoma as a program traditionally should beat Houston. Cal over Texas. That was a big one because Texas carried the banner after a couple weeks of play. No longer. Texas goes down at Cal against a mid-level Pac-12 team. So these losses even get magnified when you consider the status of these teams that the Big 12 is losing to in other conferences. Cal, a mid-level Pac-12 team. Texas was the number 1 seed at that point in the Big 12. Texas, of course, defeats Notre Dame. That's the one saving grace for the conference at this point. Other games, Texas Tech goes on the road, gets annihilated by Arizona State defensively, 68-55. Of course, Pat Mahomes and company acquitted themselves offensively. Kansas State maybe with one of the better performances in a loss at Stanford, 26-13. That was a 6-point lead late. Oklahoma State beat Pitt. Good, solid win. You're taking Oklahoma State, who will vie for the Big 12 championship, we think, against a Pitt team that's higher than mid-level in the ACC. Will probably finish 8-4, something in that range, 6-2 in the conference. But Pitt is not one of the better teams in the ACC. Clearly not in the top 3, probably not the top 4 considering North Carolina's status. So it's a decent win for the Big 12, but a win that they should get at home by a touchdown over Pitt. West Virginia over Mizzou. Looks a little bit better, actually, after the Tigers played Georgia close and losing on a 4th down play late in the game. Bad losses here. Of course, the infamous Central Michigan game against Oklahoma State on the last play. Iowa State lost to Northern Iowa. That is no surprise to any of us. But let's put it in the context of a FCS school defeating a team from the Big 12. And that brings us to Kansas. Kansas gets the excuse. They get the pass. Nobody really considers Kansas. They're kind of a forgotten program. And, of course, they're going to lose all their games. Let's put it in the category of a Power 5 school, still, barely, Power 5 school, Kansas. Not just losing, but losing by 16 points to Ohio, losing 42-6 to Memphis. Not last year's Memphis, this year's Memphis. So the Big 12 at 3-7, and the record much worse than that if you consider 15-11 overall, including Group of 5 and FCS. And did we mention Baylor? We can't mention Baylor because Baylor plays no one. The school, the team that is probably the most capable of going out and playing the big boys in the other conferences, we think. We'll never know, at least at this point until they play a bowl game. Baylor played no one. The one remaining game for the Big 12 before we get to postseason, This week, West Virginia takes on BYU at home. That's the worst conference in college football. I don't think it's really debatable. We will have some debates in the future as we mark them from 5 all the way up to 1 in the Power 5. Talk of the Big 12 right here on Mark Rogers TV.